It was a rainy afternoon when Emma opened the cedar trunk in her late grandfather's study. Dust rose in soft spirals as she lifted the heavy lid, the scent of old paper and tobacco wrapping around her like a forgotten song. Inside were letters bound with twine, yellowed maps, and a tin box filled with coins, no longer in circulation. But what caught her attention was a single photograph torn cleanly in half. The edges were frayed from years of handling, and one side showed a woman's profile, her smile gentle, her eyes alight with something between joy and sorrow. Emma turned it over. On the back, in faded ink, was written only one word: mine. Her heart raced. Who was she? Why had the picture been ripped? And more importantly, where was the other half? Emma felt the weight of mystery press on her chest. She had grown up hearing fragments of stories about her grandfather's younger days, hints of family disputes, names never spoken at the dinner table, and silences that stretched like locked doors. Now this torn photograph seemed like the key. And to you watching this story unfold, think about it. Have you ever stumbled upon an object in your family, an old letter, a keepsake, or maybe even a half-forgotten photo that whispered of secrets left unsaid? Share it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Years Ago Stories, because the next tale we tell might remind you of your own hidden piece of the past. Emma slipped the photograph into her notebook, unable to shake the feeling that it was calling her. That night, she studied the woman's face under her desk lamp, tracing the faint crease where the paper had once been whole. "Who did you belong to?" she whispered. The next morning she brought it to her mother. But when her mother saw it, the color drained from her face. She pressed her lips together and handed it back without a word. "Where did you find this?" "In Grandpa's trunk," Emma said. Her mother hesitated, eyes darting to the window as if the rain outside might hide her expression. Some things are better left buried. But Emma wasn't convinced. Later, Emma visited her grandmother's old albums. She flipped through page after page of birthdays, weddings, vacations, no sign of the mysterious woman. It was as if she had been erased deliberately, cut away not just from the photograph but from memory itself. Yet Emma noticed something. A faint outline in one album page where a photo had been removed. The corners of the paper still bore the marks of glue, and it matched the size of the torn piece she now carried. Her pulse quickened. If the other half of the photograph had once lived here, then someone had made a conscious choice to tear it apart. Why? To hide a connection? To erase a relationship? Emma felt a chill. Family secrets didn't vanish. They lingered like shadows, waiting for the right light to reveal them. That evening, as thunder rolled in the distance, Emma placed the torn photograph on her desk. She stared at the lone figure, smiling from half a page, and made a silent vow. She would find the missing piece. She would uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it had been buried. Because sometimes, the story of who we are is written not in what is remembered, but in what was torn away. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the torn photograph. The woman's smile haunted her. The single word, "mine," written on the back, burned like an ember in her mind. She had always believed she knew her family well, but now the photo whispered otherwise. The next day, she carried it to the local library, where her grandmother's old friend, Mrs. Harper, still volunteered. Mrs. Harper had been a schoolteacher in her youth and seemed to remember everyone in town. If anyone could identify a face from decades ago, it would be her. When Emma slid the torn photo across the counter, Mrs. Harper adjusted her glasses. Her eyes widened. She tapped the woman's profile gently. "I know this face," she murmured. Emma leaned forward eagerly. "Who is she?" Mrs. Harper hesitated. "Her name was Clara. She lived here years ago, before your mother was born, but—" She trailed off, biting her lip. "I didn't realize your family kept anything of hers." Emma's breath caught. Clara. The name itself felt like a chord struck deep inside her. "What was she to my grandfather?" Mrs. Harper sighed. "Some stories aren't mine to tell, child. But I will say this. Where you find one half of a photo, the other half usually lingers close by. Maybe in an album, Maybe in a drawer. Families hide things in plain sight. Emma left the library with her mind racing. Clara. The name circled her thoughts as if demanding attention. Why had her mother reacted with fear instead of curiosity? Why had Mrs. Harper spoken with such caution? That night, she returned to her grandfather's study. The cedar trunk yielded no further secrets, but the bookshelf did. At the very back, wedged between two atlases, was a cracked leather album. Dust filmed its surface, and when Emma opened it, photographs fluttered like trapped birds. Most were ordinary picnics, school plays, fishing trips. But one page had clearly been altered. Glue stains darkened the paper, and the outline of a rectangle matched exactly the size of the torn photo she now carried. Emma placed her half over the faded mark. It fit perfectly. Her heart pounded. The missing piece had once been right here. Someone had ripped it away deliberately. The next morning, Emma confronted her mother again. She set the photograph on the kitchen table and asked bluntly, "Who is Clara?" Her mother froze, coffee cup halfway to her lips. Slowly, she set it down. "Where did you hear that name?" Mrs. Harper recognized her. "She said Clara lived here before I was born." A muscle tightened in her mother's jaw. "I told you some things are better left buried." Emma's frustration boiled over. "You can't just erase people by tearing them out of pictures. She was part of our family, wasn't she?" Her mother's eyes glistened, but she shook her head. "Emma, please, don't dig into this. It will only hurt you." Emma leaned closer. "Then why does it hurt you so much?" Her mother's lips pressed tight. She gathered the dishes and turned away, ending the conversation without an answer. That evening, Emma dreamt of Clara. In the dream, the torn photograph was whole, and Clara's eyes seemed to plead with her. "Find me. Put me back where I belong." She woke in a cold sweat, the sound of rain against the window, like footsteps retreating down a hallway. Reaching for her notebook, she scribbled the name Clara in bold letters. The more her family resisted, the more certain Emma became. This mystery mattered. Somewhere, hidden away, was the missing half of that photograph. And with it, a story her family had fought to forget. On Saturday, Emma visited the town's antique shop. Mr. Lowell, the owner, loved to collect old photographs that families had discarded. She showed him the torn piece, hoping for luck. He tilted it in the light, studying the edges. "This looks like part of a studio portrait. I've seen its twin before." Emma's heart skipped. "You mean the other half?" Mr. Lowell shrugged. "Maybe. I'll check my back room. Give me a few days." As she left, hope flickered inside her. For the first time, the missing half no longer felt like a dream. It felt real, waiting to be uncovered. That night, Emma pinned the photograph fragment above her desk. She stared at Clara's profile, the torn edge raw and jagged. "I'll find you," she whispered. "No matter how long it takes, no secret stays buried forever." The lamp flickered, and for a moment, Emma thought she heard faint music, perhaps only the wind in the chimney, or perhaps the echo of a memory that refused to fade. Emma spent Sunday morning combing through the boxes in the attic. Dust clung to her hair and cobwebs brushed her shoulders, but she pressed on. Every drawer and envelope might hold the missing piece. She kept replaying Mr. Lowell's words. "I've seen its twin before." Could it be possible that the other half of Clara's photograph had drifted out of her family's hands and ended up in an antique shop? At the bottom of one box, she found a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. The handwriting wasn't her grandfather's. It was more elegant, more flowing. Emma sat cross-legged on the attic floor and began to read. The letters were addressed to Dearest C. Some were signed with a simple J. Others bore no signature at all. They spoke of evenings spent by the river, of laughter shared under lantern light, of a promise to make our families understand someday. Emma's pulse quickened. C for Clara, J for James, her grandfather's name. Her throat tightened as she realized what the torn photograph might truly represent. Clara had not been a distant acquaintance. She had been her grandfather's love, and for reasons still hidden, the family had erased her. That evening, Emma carried the letters to her mother. She laid them on the table without a word. Ellen's hands shook as she touched the ribbon. She didn't deny their authenticity. Instead, she closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I was a child," she whispered. I remember arguments late at night, Grandma shouting, Grandpa defending someone named Clara. I didn't understand. Then one day, her name was never spoken again. It was as if she had vanished. Emma pressed gently. "Why was the photograph torn?" Her mother shook her head. "Because the past was too heavy. Grandpa stayed, but a part of him always belonged to her. I think Grandma knew. That's why she destroyed the picture. To protect us, or maybe to protect herself." Emma returned to her desk and set the letters beside the half photo. Together, they formed a picture of love strong enough to defy silence, but not strong enough to survive it. She thought of Clara, her face cut away, her presence erased. Was the missing half of the photograph the side that showed her grandfather, standing proudly beside her? If so, then bringing the halves together wouldn't just reveal an image, it would reveal the truth, that her family's story was not as simple as they had been told. On Monday, she hurried to Mr. Lowell's antique shop. The bell jingled as she pushed open the door. He emerged from the back room holding a small envelope. "You might be in luck," he said, sliding the contents onto the counter. Emma gasped. It was a photograph torn down the middle, the edge jagged in a way that felt familiar. This half showed a young man in a crisp shirt, arm draped casually over someone who was missing. His smile was radiant, his eyes alive. Emma pulled her half from her notebook and pressed the torn edges together. They fit perfectly like two pieces of a puzzle that had been waiting decades to meet again. Her grandfather, James, and Clara stood side by side, caught in a moment of joy that had survived even destruction. Emma's hands trembled. She whispered, "So it's true." Mr. Lowell peered over her shoulder. "That's quite a find. You see how time works? Even when families try to bury the past has a way of crawling back into the light." Emma nodded. "But why would they hide something so beautiful?" "Because beauty often comes with pain," he said gently. Maybe someone couldn't bear to be reminded. That night, Emma gathered the pieces, the letters, and her courage. She realized this story wasn't just about Clara and James. It was about her entire family, about truth, love, and the way silence can shape generations. She placed the rejoined photograph on her desk, the seam still visible but no longer separating them. It was proof that some things, once broken, could still be made whole. Emma whispered into the quiet room, "Clara, you're not forgotten anymore." And for the first time since she found the torn photograph, she felt a strange calm. The secret was heavy, but so was the relief of knowing. Tomorrow, she would show her family the completed picture. And whatever storm it brought, at least they would finally see the whole truth. Emma laid the two pieces of the photograph on the dining table, edges joined, seams still jagged but whole again. The lamplight spilled across James and Clara, frozen in time, their joy unmistakable. The sight made Emma's chest ache. It was beautiful and dangerous. Her mother, Ellen, walked in just as Emma was smoothing the seam with her finger. Ellen froze, the casserole dish slipping slightly in her grip. "Where did you get that?" Emma looked up, determination steadying her voice. "From the antique shop. Mr. Lowell had the missing half." Ellen set the dish down with a thud. She pressed both palms against the table, staring at the reunited image. Her face drained of color. "Mom," Emma whispered, "why did you never tell me?" Ellen's shoulders shook. She sat down, eyes fixed on Clara's smile. "Because some wounds never close. We thought tearing the picture would tear out the pain, but it only left silence." Emma slid the letters forward. Grandpa loved her, didn't he? Tears welled in Ellen's eyes. Yes, Clara was his first love. Before the arguments, before the choice, he wanted to marry her. Emma's breath caught. What happened? Ellen took a long breath, voice trembling. Clara's family disapproved. They said James was too poor, that he had no future beyond the mill. But your grandfather refused to give up. They kept meeting in secret. For months, I think, until the night Grandma found out. Emma leaned closer. Grandma? Yes, my mother. She found one of Clara's letters. They fought so loud I still hear it in my dreams. Grandma gave him an ultimatum, family or Clara. He chose us. Her voice cracked. But a part of him never stopped choosing Clara in his heart. Emma felt her chest tighten. And so Grandma tore the photograph. Ellen nodded. She wanted to erase her, to make it easier for him to forget. But love doesn't vanish when you rip paper. It lingers. Emma's voice rose with passion. Then why bury it from me? From all of us? This isn't just his story, it's ours too. Ellen shook her head. Because we feared what the truth would change. We were afraid you'd see your grandfather differently. Emma touched the photograph gently. I see him more clearly. He was human, capable of love, loss, and mistakes. That doesn't diminish him. It makes him real. The front door opened, and David Emma's uncle stepped in, shaking rain from his coat. He saw their faces, the photograph, the letters. His brow furrowed. What's going on? Emma swallowed. Uncle David, meet Clara. He stepped closer, eyes widening at the photograph. I remember hearing her name once, whispered, then nothing. His jaw clenched. They tried to erase her, didn't they? Ellen whispered. To protect us. David's voice was firm. Or to protect themselves from the truth. The conversation stretched late into the evening. Ellen argued that reopening the past only stirred wounds. David insisted the truth was necessary, that the family deserved to know who Clara was. Emma sat between them, feeling the weight of generations pressing down. Finally, she spoke. We can't change what happened, but hiding it doesn't heal us. The torn photograph proves that silence only deepens the cracks. We have to face it. Ellen wept quietly. Do you think less of him now, knowing he loved someone else first? Emma shook her head. No, I think more. Because he carried that love quietly and still built a life for us. It shows how complicated people are, and how strong love can be, even when it's lost. David placed a hand on his sister's shoulder. We don't dishonor Dad by remembering Clara. We honor the truth. Both loves shaped him. Both stories shaped us. Ellen finally exhaled, as if letting go of years of tension. She looked at the photograph one last time. Maybe you're right. Maybe silence hasn't protected us at all. Emma gathered the photo and letters gently. Then let's finish what was broken. Let's tell the story, not bury it, so the next generation doesn't inherit only silence. The family sat together, the photograph between them. Its seam was visible, yes, but it no longer looked broken. It looked like proof that some truths can survive even decades of denial. The night was unusually still when Emma carried the rejoined photograph into the living room. The lamps cast a golden glow on the walls, and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen felt louder than usual, as if the whole house was listening. Her mother and uncle sat on opposite ends of the sofa, tension still hanging between them. Emma set the picture down on the coffee table. There, she whispered. No more halves, no more silence. Ellen drew in a sharp breath, her fingers twitching as if she wanted to grab the photo but was afraid of what touching it might awaken. David leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his eyes unblinking. Emma placed the letters beside the photo. This is the truth. Grandpa loved Clara, and Grandma tore her out of our story. But we can't keep pretending she didn't exist. We deserve to know the whole picture. David picked up the photograph, tilting it toward the light. Look at him, he murmured. Look at Dad. I've never seen him smile like this in any of the photos we kept. Ellen swallowed hard. It's unsettling to see him with her, to know he carried this love while raising us. Emma shook her head gently. It doesn't erase the love he gave you. It shows he was human, complex, capable of more than one truth. The seam in the middle of the picture glared back at them. It wasn't flawless. The tear line was still visible, but somehow that made it feel even more powerful. It wasn't perfect, neither was life. Emma unfolded one of the letters and read aloud. The words trembled in her voice. My dearest Clara, when I see your smile, I feel as though the world stops holding its breath. If I could, I'd place our picture on every wall so no one could deny what we have. One day, I promise, the world will know us together. Her voice broke. He wanted them to know. He wanted this love to be seen. David's jaw tightened. And yet it was hidden, Ellen whispered. Maybe because it hurt too much. Maybe because love that isn't chosen can feel like betrayal. For the first time, Ellen admitted aloud what she had buried for years. Mom, your grandmother. She wasn't cruel, Emma. She was terrified. She believed if Dad held on to Clara, we would lose him. She thought erasing Clara was the only way to keep our family whole. Emma's chest ached. But it didn't keep him whole, did it? It just kept us in the dark. Ellen nodded, tears streaming. Yes, and in trying to protect us, she carried her own silence too. A silence that shaped everything. David rose and began pacing the room. So what do we do now? We can't rewrite the past, but we can't pretend anymore either. Emma looked at both of them. We tell the truth. We remember Clara, not to dishonor Grandma, but to finally let the story breathe. Ellen frowned. And if it changes the way the younger generation sees us? Sees him? Emma lifted the photograph carefully. It won't break us. It will bind us. Because the truth is always stronger than silence. That weekend, they invited the rest of the family, cousins, nieces, nephews, into the living room. The photograph, finally whole, was placed in the center of the table like a relic. Emma began, voice steady. This is Clara. She was part of Grandpa's life, part of his love. Her story was torn away, but tonight we put it back where it belongs. Gasps filled the room. Some whispered in shock, others in curiosity. A cousin asked, "Why didn't anyone tell us before?" David answered firmly, "Because sometimes families think silence is safer, but silence is its own kind of wound." They passed the photograph around. Each pair of hands held it with reverence. The letters followed, read aloud in turns. By the end, the room was heavy with tears, but also lighter, as if a burden had finally been lifted. Aunt Lila, one of the oldest family members present, spoke softly. I remember Clara. She used to sing at church. Her laugh carried across the room. I always wondered why she vanished. Her eyes filled. I thought I had imagined her. Emma squeezed her hand. You didn't imagine her. She was real. And now we all know. Ellen wiped her face. It's time to stop punishing ourselves with silence. Clara deserves to be remembered, not hidden. David added, and Dad deserves to be remembered as he truly was, not as a simplified version we could live with. As the night ended, the family gathered around the photograph one last time. The torn seam was still visible, but no one minded. Instead, it became a symbol of pain endured, of truths revealed, of a family strong enough to face its past. Emma looked at the younger cousins. Remember this. Families aren't perfect, but even the broken pieces can fit together again. Don't ever believe silence is safer than truth. They nodded, wide-eyed, carrying the weight of a story once lost. Later, when everyone had gone, Emma sat alone with the photograph. She traced the seam, whispering to the woman in the picture. Clara, you're part of us again. You always were. The house seemed to sigh with her, as if finally at rest. The night after the family gathering, the house felt strangely lighter. For years, silence had pressed against the walls, filling corners with invisible weight. Now the silence was different, gentle, reflective, like the hush after a hymn. Emma couldn't sleep. She tiptoed into the living room where the photograph still rested on the coffee table. The seam down the middle glimmered in the lamplight. She sat cross-legged on the rug and studied it again. For the first time, she didn't see the tear as damage. She saw it as proof that something broken could be pieced together and still carry beauty. She heard footsteps and turned to find her mother. Ellen wrapped a robe tighter around herself and sat down beside her daughter. For a moment, they just looked at the picture in silence. Finally, Ellen whispered, "I was angry with him for years. Angry because I felt like part of his heart was never ours. But tonight, seeing this photo whole again, I realized it wasn't a threat. It was part of what made him who he was." Emma placed a hand over her mother's. "He still chose you. He chose this family." Ellen's eyes filled. "Yes, but now I know he also carried Clara in a corner of his heart. And maybe that doesn't mean he loved us less. Maybe it means he was capable of more love than I understood." David joined them quietly, a glass of water in his hand. He set it down and sat on the other side of the rug. "I've been thinking," he said, "about how we judge people from the distance of time. We see their choices and call them mistakes or betrayals. But when you're living them, choices don't come with labels. They come with fear, with hope, with whatever strength you can muster." He looked at the photo. "Dad wasn't perfect, but maybe none of us are supposed to be. Maybe perfection was never the point. Maybe love, in all its messy, complicated forms, is—" Emma felt her throat tighten. "I used to think family secrets were poison, but maybe they're seeds, buried deep, waiting for the right time to grow. And when they finally surface, they remind us who we really are." Ellen brushed a tear away. "You're right. This truth doesn't divide us. It binds us. Clara isn't just part of Dad's story. She's part of ours. And if we hide her, we're hiding from ourselves." David nodded. "So let's not hide anymore. Let's carry her with us, not as shame, but as strength." The following evening, they gathered again, smaller this time, just Emma, her mother, and David. Emma placed the photo in a frame, cracks still visible. She set it on the mantel beside the wedding photo of her grandparents. "Both belong here," she said firmly. "One shows the life that was lived. The other shows the life that could have been. Together, they tell the full story." Ellen hesitated, then smiled softly. "Yes, and neither picture diminishes the other." They lit a candle in front of the photographs. The flame flickered, casting shadows that seemed to dance across both images. For the first time, the room felt whole. As they sat in the quiet glow, Emma realized something profound. The photograph had been torn not just to erase Clara, but to erase discomfort, complexity, and vulnerability. Families often tried to simplify stories into neat lines, but life wasn't neat. It was jagged, raw, and unfinished. And maybe that was the beauty of it. She leaned back, whispering almost to herself, "The truth doesn't break us. It heals us." The framed photograph remained on the mantel for days, its seam catching the light like a scar. At first, Emma expected discomfort that seeing Clara alongside her grandparents would feel like betrayal. Instead, it became a point of peace. The family stopped walking past the photo in silence. They began pausing, remembering, even smiling. One evening, Emma sat at her desk with her journal open. She copied lines from her grandfather's letters, preserving them in her own handwriting. Beneath the words, she wrote, "We are not only the stories we choose to keep, but also the stories we dare to recover." She imagined one day sharing this with her children. They wouldn't know Clara personally, but they would know she mattered. They would learn that love, even if lost, leaves traces worth honoring. At the next Sunday dinner, Ellen spoke openly for the first time. "I've been ashamed of my silence, but Emma's right. The truth doesn't break us. It gives us roots." David raised his glass. To Dad, to Clara, to every story we thought was gone, but lived on anyway. The family echoed the toast, their voices trembling but strong. Emma watched the faces around the table and felt something shift. They weren't just eating a meal, they were reclaiming wholeness. The photograph had become more than an object. It was a bridge. Later that night, Emma stood alone in front of the mantel. She touched the glass of the framed photo and whispered, "Clara, you belong here. You always did." She realized the real lesson wasn't about the picture itself. It was about the courage to face what had been torn, to admit that brokenness could still hold beauty. Families often pretend perfection is the glue, but honesty, even when messy, is stronger. The past doesn't vanish when ignored. It waits, sometimes in attics, sometimes in albums, sometimes in torn halves, until someone is brave enough to bring it back into the light. And to you watching this story unfold, have you ever found an old photo, letter, or keepsake that changed the way you saw your family? What hidden piece of the past still waits in your story? Share it in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to Years Ago Stories and ring the bell, because sometimes the pieces of the past don't just belong in memory, they belong in our hands, ready to make us whole again.